What fictional character deserves a spin-off the most? Gandalf. I'd read all his biography. The two Blue Mages. They were the members of the Order but nothing is known about them. I think there's fanfics about this but I'd be down to see what Haymitch's life was like pre, during and immediately post Hunger Games. The guy that always drops his ice cream in Lilo Stitch. 2.5 Men, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Why not Zoidberg? Preacher from Firefly, but back when he was a ruthless assassin for the Alliance. Nice try, Hollywood, now make something new. But if they were to pick an idea from this thread, then nobody can make a YouTube video about it titled The Spin-Off That Nobody Asked For. The two stormtroopers at the beginning of the one episode of The Mandalorian. Whole thing is just them having a conversation during target practice. Isn't that basically just red versus blue? I'm still convinced that some writer was a RVB fan, wrote that scene as a nod to RVB. A Sage Ventress. I want a plot of the week series of her bounty hunting adventures during the Clone Wars. Rattlesnake Jake from Rango. Honestly, he was the best character. I'd like to see his backstory explored. Rango is one of my favorite animated movies ever and I would watch the hell out of a Rattlesnake Jake spin-off. Grand Admiral Thrawn. I'd love to see the Timothy Zahn books made into a 6 series showing the rise of Thrawn and Ordinda Price before Rebels. Toph's Metal Bending School. I know that Azula had her mini arch with her mother but I wanted to see it animated rather than read it sadly. Also Sokka. I'd love to see a spin-off for him. It seemed criminal to me that Sokka wasn't present in The Legend of Korra. I kind of wonder if they chose to exclude him simply because they couldn't create a true enough older version of him. Although I'd totally accept that as a reason rather than seeing the character being ruined. It's still sad to not see him. Chiron. The Continental Front Desk Manager from the John Wick series. I picture him going about his day doing simple things with efficiency, diplomacy intact. He lives in a small, yet well-kept apartment, lined with bookshelves, artwork, mostly sculptures, a vast tea collection and a long-haired cat named Stykes. Throughout his day-to-day life he does extraordinary things and makes them seem ordinary. He stops a mugging while coming home from work, dispatching the muggers with brutal efficiency. He helps an elderly lady with her parcels, and turns down any offer of reward. He tutors his next-door neighbor, a Latino teen named Jesus, on history. He attends art shows and visits museums. Then, one unfortunate day, he finds out his sister has been killed. He takes a leave from the Continental and brings the killer to justice in a manner that would make Jason Bourne, Brian Mills, Robert McCall, Ethan Hunt and even John Wick shudder in disgust. Lance Reddick just needs to be in more things period. Indeed, you're going to have to settle for a young Winston. It's in the works. Set 40 in the past. If they explain how he's minting his own currency, then accepting that currency as payment. I want to know how his self-sustaining economy works. Aren't they making a prequel movie about the Continental? It's going to be a series on Stars. They just released some more information on it. It's going to be about a young Winston before he became the manager of the Continental. Raymond Holt. Why is there no spin-off? I specifically requested it. Velvet Thunder. Frenchie from The Boys. That dude playing that character is something I could watch all day. There's just something beautiful about the way he says what in the F is this. I loved the way he described MM's OCD ice cream problem. I'd gladly listen to him read the phone book. Frenchie is by far my favorite character, and the actor who plays him does such an incredible job. I'd watch the hell out of a Frenchie spin-off. Just the little snippet of backstory that we get makes me want to know more. Toma Capon is great in this role. Davy Jones and Calypso. I would love to see the background from that story. I don't even think Disney remembers what happened clearly. In the 5th movie they forgot that Shia gave Jack the compass before Dead Man's Chest. Would that be from before or after his heart got cut out? It would be pretty cool to slowly over the course of like 4 or 5 seasons slowly turn into an octopus thing. Rita, the Full Metal Bee from Edge of Tomorrow. From the hints and guidance she gave Tom in the film, her time loop experience was a lot nastier. Give her a prequel. Yes, I loved Rita. After that film came out I wanted to get a Full Metal Bee poster but I couldn't find one anywhere. Oh. Especially as it's got one of those titles where you can do a funny prequel name like Edge of Yesterday or something. 2 days before the Edge of Tomorrow. Avatar. Tales of the White Lotus. Each member gets a season. OMG yes, can you imagine the Uncle Iroh season? They could focus it on the relationship between him and Luten. Minerva McGonagall. Downton Abbey wasn't a spin-off. OMG, literally in the middle of rewatching that show and she is gold. Great Uncle Ford and Grunkle Stan from Gravity Falls. I would kill to see a series of the sailing across the world on the Stano War. Seeing Ford's adventures on the other side of the portal would be great. The focus of the series could be about him writing the journals. 3 journals, 3 seasons. There's a real third journal in bookstores that talks about his adventures. It's really fun and it's got encrypted messages throughout the pages. I would love to see more of their wayward youth. Also their relationship with the twins' parents. We see Stan and Stanford's little brother as a baby when they're high school seniors. That had to be a unique relationship. I think they have a baby sister. But yeah, same difference. I also just realized that Stanley was kicked out of the house and basically shunned when she was very young. So she may have only ever known him as Stanford. Which is sad to think about. Gwen from Ben 10, but only from the original continuity. She gets overlooked because of the amount of attention her cousin Ben gets, and we never got to see the full potential of her true power, and she proved to be very badass even without his help. I swear there was an episode about this in the original Ben 10. She kinda feels left out and someone grants her powers. All I remember is there is cat medallion. There's a couple. There's an episode where she's lucky girl or something like that and has a cat medallion that gives her powers. There's also a what if episode where she has the watch and is way better at it than Ben. And then the episode where future Gwen kidnaps young Ben to the future has her as a hero. Jimmy Woo. It doesn't even need to be that much about the other superheroes. I just want to see him doing funny Randall Park stuff and some street magic sprinkled in. I would love to see some new Marvel one-shots. Those little shorts they did with Coulson and other side characters. Just on what Jimmy gets up to around the time of other movies and shows. It could be called Agent Jimmy Woo Does Paperwork and I'd watch the F out of it. Troy and a bed in the morning would be great. It would be meter of them if they had a real morning talk show in our universe. Like if they were morning hosts. Merely pretending to be into those shows. Gathering clues and blending in. To take down the TV channel from within. Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. Nah, it's too soon. They only just did a Mary Poppins reboot in 2018. Yondu finds himself inexplicably alive in 1910 in England. The children need a nanny. The voice in the wind whispers, "Who cares? I ain't no nanny. What they need is to learn how to grow a spine and stand up for themselves. And who are you? I have not pirated half the galaxy to take orders from mysterious disembodied voices. Bunch of Terran mumble jumble. Okay, look, the children need a nanny and you need a ride off of Earth. I'll even sweeten the pot. Do a really good job and I'll even give you a hand-killing ego. What do you say? Wipe out your sins before they even happen and get some old-fashioned revenge?" Yondu rubs his chin. "Now you are speaking a language I understand. Well, where are the little pipsqueaks? I'm sure Uncle Yondu can show them the ropes. Toughen them up a bit." We then see approximately a remake of Mary Poppins, except Yondu spends most of the time being pissed off at the cartoon adventures. In the end, though, the children learn how to take care of themselves and Yondu learns how to be a responsible, if unorthodox, parent figure. He also robs the bank. Bert also leaves England to go to space with Yondu. The end. Kidnapping kids to bring them to their death would make for a fun series. I know Donald Glover quit Community to pursue his music career, but I would 100% watch Troy Barnes sail around the world. I would both love to see this, but also be strangely sad nostalgic over the rest of the cast missing, especially his relationship with Abed. Troy and Abed in the Uacian. I would imagine there would be some Abed involvement. Maybe Troy sails by where Abed's family is from and he happens to be visiting. Or Abed tracks Troy via radar and tells his own version of the adventures of the childish tycoon. Technically it was Troy Barnes' clone that set sail from Colorado with LeVar Burton. That does not make me want to watch it less. Suki and the Kyoshi Warriors. Aragorn. He's got like 80 years of being a badass ranger. Probably tons of stories of him fighting all sorts of creatures. I had a playwriting class in high school and one writing thing we had to do was written a monologue for an existing character. I did mine as Aragorn, now reigning as king, and missing the days where he had a clear-cut good and evil battle to solve with his sword instead of dealing with the politics of a large country. Sire, the cow died on my property. therefore it is my cow. Sire, no, the cow grew up on my property and ate all my grass, therefore the cow belongs to me. Aragorn, ugh. Someone resurrect Sauron. Absolutely. He shows up in LOTR without hardly any backstory. He's the ultimate protagonist and we know close to nothing about what he's done his whole life. We just know who his great I have no idea how many greats grandfather is. I can't decide which version of him I like better. In the films, he's somewhat the reluctant king figure and is extremely humble about who he is and his right to the throne of men. In the books, he's similar except he declares his title quite often instead of letting other characters be like, don't you know who this is? The outline is in the appendices. Elrond adopts him and raises him after his father dies in battle when he is very young. He lives as Rivendell with his mom. As a teen, Elrond eventually tells him who he really is and it goes to his head. He starts going after his stepsister over his mother's objections, thinking she'd be impressed by his lineage. She's not into him and laughs at him. She's basically his great grandaunt, in addition to stepsister, and the oldest female member of his line. So, why would his lineage make her interested or impressed with him? He leaves Rivendell to make a name for himself. First, he travels to and fights for Owen. Then, he goes to Gondor and becomes a huge hero. He leads a navy assault in South Gondor and destroys the Umbra Navy. The navy the dead deal with in Return of the King would have been unstoppable and way bigger if he didn't. Denethor gets really jealous that his dad likes Aragorn more than him. Denethor might know who he really is, and is convinced he's trying to supplant him. Aragorn then gets a vision his time in Gondor is over. His leaving causes a huge panic. On his way back north, he stops in Lothlorien and meets Arwen again. Now that he's older, wiser, and a hero among men, she falls for him. He's happy in Lorien, but duty calls. He then goes back north and takes his place as chief of the Rangers. Elrond tells him the age of men is coming, and the only way he can be with Arwen is to win his birthright. The world won't be safe for her if he can't, and only the greatest of men can have her. He leaves Rivendell to make a name for himself. First, he travels to and fights for Owen. Then, he goes to Gondor and becomes a huge hero. He leads a navy assault in South Gondor and destroys the Umbra Navy. The navy the dead deal with in Return of the King would have been unstoppable and way bigger if he didn't. Denethor gets really jealous that his dad likes Aragorn more than him. Denethor might know who he really is, and is convinced he's trying to supplant him. Aragorn then gets a vision his time in Gondor is over. His leaving causes a huge panic. I mean, this whole chunk could fill a dozen movies and it's skipped over even in the appendices pretty quickly, because no one else has mentioned it yet. Jrr Tolkien's parents died while he was a child, and he ended up with a Catholic priest as his guardian. While he was living in that guardianship, he met his eventual wife at age 16 and declared his love for her, but was forbidden from seeing her until he was 21 and had made a place for himself in the world. This condition was met when he entered military service. Although he was not a king, only an officer. Stop me if any of that sounds familiar. There was even a whole thing where his wife converted to Catholicism for him despite her Protestant upbringing and her parents' objections. Something I choose immortal life with you. Yada yada. Church immortal souls stuff, etc. But Tolkien as a general rule bristled at people looking for religious parallels in his work. Young Captain Holt. I heard he caught the Disco Strangler and the Freestyle Killer. Really? I've never heard him mention it. And a surprise cameos from young Hitchcock and Scully. That would be way too perfect. Then show what actually happened with Wunsch and Derek Yetter. My wife was murdered by a man in a yellow sweater. Bigfoot, Velvet, Thunder, Vindication. You took the wrong fluffy boy. Punk, Vindication. Zelda. Her name's in the bloody title. Maybe she could actually get to do stuff one day. Technically, she's the main character in one of the CDI games. They don't count, of course, but, you know, technically, you dare bring Light into Marlair. You would think they'd have done more with Shake, but instead she is relegated to Super Smash Bros. In both Ocarina of Time and Skyward Sword, Zelda was up to some adventures of her own, but we just never saw them. The two stoner animal control guys from Parks and Recreation. R.I.P. Harris Whittles. Yay. He was going to work on and star in Master of None with Aziz Ansari. I think they replaced him with Eric Warahim. But I'm actually gonna kill these birds for real. Kill all birds, got it. And E. Sandberg's park ranger who yell talks would make a great cameo appearance. I wish he'd shown up a few more times in parks. Ayla Dennis Feinstein and Ken Hottert. Munro from Grimm. I don't know if he'd have any interesting stories tbh, but I just love the character so much. It'd probably be watchable even if it was just him fixing random people's clocks. The characters were so well written. I loved them so much. The show got so effing stupid but I just stayed tuned to watch them. Perfectly cast and the character development was just chef's kiss. I'm down for the Munro and Rosalie show. They were the best part by the end anyway. Hosea Matthews or Lenny Summers from Red Dead Redemption 2. My bleeding heart needs more Arthur Morgan. This is true. Even Hosea describes his earlier days as being even more bad and degenerate than everyone combined on RDR2 timeline. He apparently was much worse than Dutch at some point, not a conman like he currently is. Alastor Mood from the Harry Potter books. Make a TV series on his prime days as an aura. Hunting down and dueling Death Eaters and you'll bet I'll watch. Lorandora, narrator. In the magical justice system, the wizards are represented by two separate yet equally important groups, the auras, who investigate evil doing, and the Minister of Magic, who arbitrarily condemns both the guilty and the innocent to life sentences of constant torture. These are their stories. There is so much potential with this universe. IDK how we ended up with the Cursed Child, or Fantastic Beasts tbh. It's the same thing as Star Wars deciding to make everything about the Skywalkers when there's a gigantic universe out there. Fantastic Beasts was a super cool story that didn't need to be about Grindelwald or Dumbledore or any of the other main characters in Harry Potter. It would be a great way to do a show about the Wizarding War, told from his perspective. Could bring in other members of the Order of the Phoenix as and when you feel like to. Plus the show name would be Badass. Mad Eye. Similar, but I would love a book of short stories of all the dumb Fred and George got up to while at Hogwarts. Each chapter is its own short story about whatever they were scheming at the time. Finnick Otter from the Hunger Games, or just the entire story of the 50th Hunger Games with Haymitch. This was my biggest disappointment with the movie. Catching Fire's description of Haymitch's games was interesting as F, and it got completely overlooked in the movie. Not even a mention of it. Iroh from Avatar. His journey from Fire Nation Prince and General to leader of the White Lotus, including the siege of Ba Sing Se, the Sun Warriors and Dragons and sadly Lu Ten. Yes Iroh, we all know about your trip to the spirit world. I imagine he would have decided to become completely in touch with his spiritual self after the loss of his son and his departure from the war, making him the first of the Fire Nation to be able to do so for a long time. I too would like to watch Iroh commit war crimes. Harsh but fair lol. Chiron from Rogue One. The dude definitely has some wild stories to tell. Plus the idea of a force sensitive person who isn't a Jedi or Sith is really cool and I'd love to see what's done with that more. And maybe he can be accompanied by his friend. I forgot his name, but he seems like a really cool character. Baze Malbus. Uguay, Tigress, Shen are the most interesting characters in Kung Fu Panda and I think they would make for interesting movies if aimed at a older audience. Creed Bratton. Can you imagine my disappointment when I realized who Creed 2015 was not about? I hope not to make that same mistake when William Charles Schneider eventually comes out. Nah, Creed is best left as an enigmatic mystery. Agreed. What I want is for him to randomly appear in other NBC shows, not just comedies, but have him be an informant and or suspect, but not the perp, on Law and Order. Have him be somehow involved on Chicago Fire. Have him appear in character on reality shows. Frozone from The Incredibles. A 1-hour movie of him arguing with his wife about his supersuit. How long would Samuel Jackson be able to go without saying Martha Fair? I wouldn't have minded if Incredibles 2 was just about Frozone tbh. Incredibles 2 focused on Ella Stigerl. I wouldn't be surprised if Incredibles 3 focused on Frozone. I really would have liked to see Garak from DS9 with his own show. He was such an interesting character, like House of Cards style politics, plus he was a spy assassin, and he had a massive crush on Bashir, just a mix of a charming bastard. Lewis from Ant-Man, a movie about what happened to him while Scott was in jail, a 3-hour movie of him just explaining the MCU, and by the end of the movie, he's still on phase 1, complete with a ton of unorganized flashbacks. Came here to make sure this was on the list. Surprised it isn't higher. I would also love a series of shorts where he gives a recap of all MCU films. I want this as a built-in feature to the D+ shows. When something in the show references a movie, a little pop-up in the corner you can click on. It pauses the TV show, just to Lewis give you a quick rundown of the reference, then immediately jumps back to the TV show. I want a Lewis movie where it's just him explaining something that happened to him for 2 hours. Lewis explains us pop culture from the 80s to today to Star-Lord. General Grievous. Would be awesome to have a series exploring why he hates the Jedi so much and how he became a cyborg. Then see him later murdering Jedi. Not sure if it's canonical anymore, but he was a fierce warrior, and the Clone Wars wrecked his planet. Sidious recognized his tactical skills, so Sidious sabotaged his ship. Sidious told him the Jedi did it, and Sidious put him in the cyborg body. I'm going from memory, but I think that was his background. The man with the big yellow hat. What's that all about?